we can get a report.
We approved unanimously a stipulated agreement for a student. We had lots of discussion about our sunshine letter, and I'm sure we're not done with those discussions, but that's why we do it, and we talk about it for a while, so. Okay? That's it.
And you would lead us in a flag salute, Mr. Cohen?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And special orders of business. Item A, sanitary graduate.
Yes. Dr. Ritchley.
Mom and Dad.
This is one of those really cool nights. One of the beauties of St. Hedron is that we have a program where the students, when they get their 180 and they get their endorsement, they graduate. There's no, you gotta wait till the end of the semester, wait till the end of the year. And so we have a graduate tonight. And so,
Congratulations.
we would like to
This
recognize her.
This is Lauren Van Pelt, and she is a graduating senior this year. She is a remarkable student. She is graduating early. She has a job at Rite Aid, and she's been working at Rite Aid for quite a while. Mr. Lamont and Mrs. Richley were her independent study teachers, and she just did a really great job of getting all her work done, and she was done like with all her regular classes like 2 quarters ago. So she's just been finishing up her senior project, and I wish you well, Lauren. You've been a pleasure to work with. So,
We need to do a family pic with the diploma.
all right. So,
Come on up.
Come on over. Yeah.
Can you take it, Lauren, or please?
you show it up, Lauren.
We'll try this. We'll try and paparazzi him a little bit. Let's step over to the right a little bit. That way we don't have this in the way.
Makeup.
It's paparazzi time.
I'm pretty good. You get him? All right. So what are your plans now that you're a graduate?
I plan to go to cosmetology school eventually,
Okay.
hopefully within the fall or within next year.
Okay.
So,
Until then, we'll see you at Rite Aid every now and then.
yeah.
See you often.
Good job, Lauren.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
And some community recognitions.
Well, one of the things I like to do is try and recognize a volunteer every year.
Yeah.
So this year's nominee, and was a unanimous choice by everybody I talked to, thinks we're here tonight to talk about the farm. So you might know already who it is. So, come on up, Jennifer. This is the kind of commitment she has. She taught me how to mend fence out at the farm. And believe me, I am really from Cleveland. So, the farm, this is the farm we're going to have, when the goat farm gets finished, we get some doors done, we will have the best farm of any school around. Not even close. It is a fabulous site. And it's really, Jennifer, I told Mike and I were trying to do this and said, Mike, let's just get the hell out of the way. Let's let Jennifer take it and go. So we were fortunate enough to get this grant endowment from a person who had passed away. Well, there was $110,000 in it. It has 10 cents left. It literally has 10 cents left.
That's
I
good.
feel sorry for you, man. That's all I'm saying. She has a Visa card, cut it. But the reality is, we used every dime of it. It is a wonderful looking site. When we're done in a month or so, we'll have one of our board sessions. We need to go out there and see it. It's fabulous. But that's not why we're here even. Jen is also part of the WEA, the summer gala, where we raised thousands and thousands, 56,000 or something this year for the kids. Okay. She does a ton of that stuff. On top of that, she has a real passion for tri-tip dinners. So every time anybody's doing a tri-tip dinner, hey, call Jen, see if you can get the people. And she's done them for everybody, boosters and all kinds of groups, the ag groups. If there's something that needs to get done, she's one of the get done people. And I appreciate all her help, and I know that there's certain times where she's like, get this done. She's pestering me about my Sherwood people getting their stuff in for summer gala because I'm the last principal to get it in, and I appreciate that. And she motivates people to get stuff done. And she's done a ton for us, and we super appreciate it. So, we are presenting Jennifer as the Volunteer of the Year for Willits Unified School. And Alex, you should come up and give the official as the board president. It is well deserved. And sorry I cheated you about you talking about the farm.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well deserved. Mark, get in here. You're part of this too.
I'll get on the other side.
Oh, make me look even shorter.
A rose with a couple thorns.
Can she still talk
Thank
about
you.
the farm though? I want to hear about it.
One of the things that we do, when we do finish, we really need to do a walkthrough tour. And we need to have the teachers there, we need to have the ag group there. There's a huge alumni group that helps. All kinds of stuff. I mean, he comes with his mini X and tears stuff up for us. The vendors who come and help us do it at a cut rate or free. I mean,
Yes.
the real issue when I say that we spent 110 of this money, if the district had done the project and had to go through DSA and architects and all that stuff, it'd have been twice as much money to do. We'd have never been able to put a farm together like this. So getting the community to help and getting the local contractors to help is the deal breaker. It's what makes it go. I just
I can
wish
give you a real quick. We are in the last few steps of being finished. The goat barn, we just had the pig barn the old pig barn is completely gone. All the dirt work's been done, so the place is completely level now. We had HSN come in and they engineered it, so we're good to go. The only thing left in the goat barn to do is we have to enclose the top because of the pig barn being there when we finished it. We couldn't get the ladders up there, so that just needs to be closed. And the last 3 goat pens need to be put in. The other 4 goat pens are in and goats are in them now. The pig barn and the big show barn are up and ready. The pins for the hog pens are there and just ready to go in and be set up. And waters have to be done inside, which is, not easy, but it's the easiest part of the whole thing. The big show barn / classroom barn, the only thing it needs is the power and the lights in, and then it has 10 slider doors that are going to be built and put into place. I've ordered everything, so it should be here and we'll get those put in. So that's all done.
NorCal donated rock because there is the tri-tip dinners coming up, and we need to be able to drive through there. NorCal delivered 9 loads of rock to us for free. Boudelier Construction came last week and worked all the gravel so that we can drive out there now. So that's all done. As soon as we have 3 weeks of clear weather, we can bring in all the grindings that was donated by Granite, and then we're good as golden. The pins will go up. The kids that keep animals out there have hours to do, and so Kelly wants the kids that are keeping animals out there to help build the outside fences, and it's good to be used. I know Kelly has already gotten 3 or 4 people coming in into the education barn to teach the kids about swine and sheep and veterinarian. So it's already got dates booked to start the kids' stuff to go. So we do plan once all the grindings are in, a huge opening ceremony of the ag farm.
It's kind of a reopening, not a grand opening.
Yeah. The chamber wants to get involved on, inviting the community. As of right now, we have 35 businesses and local just community members that have came and volunteered their time and donated their equipment for the farm. So,
Yeah. And it really has been a community effort. I mean, that's one of the great things is that she knows everybody. And so, just like the old barn, somebody like coming with their mini X and ramming that over and knocking it over. I think it was like,
That was more fun than work.
yeah, get back at it from what he had to do when he was a kid or whatever. And then we had solid waste donated the big dumpster for us to put it in and take it away. So everybody, there's probably 20 businesses or more who have helped us along the way.
and not just from Willits. We've had several businesses out of Ukiah donate all the fencing that he got to learn how to do some real fencing on. That was all donated from a company out of Ukiah, and they donated everything. The wire, the fence posts, the ties, everything for him to do that, so.
But not just the barn. Think summer gala, think tri-tip dinners, think coming in, helping people when they need it, all kinds of stuff.
See a career fair out there.
Yeah, Jen's done a wonderful job in a lot of areas, and it impacts arts and library and everything. So, super appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. You don't have to stay for the whole meeting now. I just tricked you about the barn.
And did you have a second one, Mike?
I do, but we're going to have to do that at a different time, maybe even not at a board meeting, but I wanted to talk about Microfor. Microfor unfortunately transferred their work here to North Carolina. However, in the process, I was contacted by Daryl MacGyver, who has worked there 30 plus years, and he said, hey, why don't you come over and look and see if there's anything you'd like, we'd be willing to donate it to the school. Do we do 40 trips there? Probably.
A lot.
We did a lot. Crazy stuff.
Christmas next year together.
Yeah. I mean, we got thousands of dollars worth of metal for our metal shop. We've got swamp coolers. We've got file cabinet, desk, technology stuff. One of the really crazy things that I couldn't let them smash because when leaving, they were going to have to smash this. Jen and I are trying to figure out, Microfor's specialty was making restrooms for luxury trains. Well, they had a demo unit, a whole boxed in unit. It's an unbelievably nice bathroom. We're going to try and put that into the barn so we have a restroom out at the farm. So it's like this Cadillac restroom, and you're like, you open the door and you go, really? I mean, it's just beautiful inside. And so we're going to take that and try and incorporate that into a corner of the barn and have a restroom. Because that's one of the things when you're out there, there's no restroom. You gotta run all the way across the bridge, back over into school, and we could have a restroom there. But that's an example, that unit that Microfor has to be worth 15, 20,000 easily. But they donated tons of stuff and super gracious. He'd call and say, oh, when are you guys coming? And you know, what's really nice about the community is that I don't have a storage place for this. So I called Arnie from the Howard Foundation. I said, Arnie, I need a favor. Can I use the emergency room at the old hospital to store stuff? So if you go to the emergency room at the old hospital, you'll see a bunch of file cabinets and desks and all the swamp cooler stuff, all the stuff we couldn't find a place for immediately is all housed there now. And so anybody who goes to look to buy it's going to walk in there and go, what's going on here? But it's kind of our storage site because I needed a dry storage space for that stuff. And Microfor has been just fabulous about it. Daryl is retiring, and he retired and has a house up in Trinity. So when he comes back in town, I'm probably going to have to get a couple of you board members together because we have a plaque. We've already sent a letter of thank you to the corporation, but I can't even estimate how many thousands of dollars they donated to us because every time I turn around, oh, Microfor has that. Let's go see if they let us have it. And we got tons of tools for our ag shop and our wood shop. We got tons of stuff. And so it's really been a great experience. Crazy stuff, like our bus drivers. Those big staircases that they have, like when you go up to the second floor for stairs, those rolling staircases, we got one for the bus drivers so they can clean the top of their bus. I mean, just crazy stuff that you'd never think of buying, but you go, oh, that'll work. So, wonderful example. You know, I'm sad that they're leaving town, but they're certainly leaving the right way.
Very much appreciated.
Yeah, I want to recognize Microfor for that. They were fabulous.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we are to the audit report.
Good evening, my name is Monique, I'm with Christy White, and we're your independent auditors. I'm here on behalf of Michael Ash, the signing partner. So thank you for having me. I see some familiar faces. We conducted our audit of the district's financials, capital assets, long-term debt, as well as compliance with state and federal laws. We visit the district about twice a year, sometimes 3, depending on our scheduling. Once in the spring, where we visit a sample of school sites, we test attendance, we look at the ASBs, their internal controls over their deposits, their cash disbursements. We also look at the district's internal controls over cash receipts, cash disbursements, and payroll processes, as well as other state compliance areas like the SARP, the ACES program, instructional minutes, and the list goes on. In the fall, we test all balance sheet and income state items as the year ended June 30th. And we also perform a single audit over the child nutrition program. So the results of our audit are found within our audit report, starting on page 2, and it also continuing on pages 71 and 77. But for an easier reference, our opinions are summarized on page 78 of the report. So we issue an opinion.
Here, very back.
I'll wait for you guys to get there. So we issue opinions over the district financial statements to make sure they're materially accurate, federal awards as well as state compliance, and you can see that broken out. And you can see that we issued an unmodified opinion for all 3 areas, which is the best opinion that we can possibly issue, so good job on that. However, there were 3 findings related to internal control deficiencies, as well as 3 findings related to state compliance. So right after this summary page, you can see on page 79, that's where the findings begin. And it kind of lists the criteria, what we did, what was the condition, and kind of our recommendations as well as the district's corrective action. So the first one involves interfund activities. So that would be related to the due tos and due froms or interfund payables and receivables. In this case, what we did is we looked at the interfund transaction detail and we noticed that prior year receivables and payables, interfund payables and receivables weren't cleared. Per Ed Code, they should be cleared within the fiscal year or depending when they are recorded. Excuse me. So pretty much we recommend that the district implement a proper controls to ensure that interfund payables and receivables are cleared within the fiscal year or when they're supposed to be. The district typically does this in order to prevent similar oversights in the future. The policy will be amended to require these be cleared or repaid during the interim reporting periods as opposed to on an annual basis.
This is just for we temporarily move money from one fund to another.
Exactly.
Basically keep things balanced during the course of a year.
Yes,
And then within a certain period of time, we're supposed to move that money back.
exactly, or repay it. But it's
Essentially-
just temporary borrowing.
For us, what they relate to is that when we're closing the books, if we, for instance, book our, the indirect cost rate, which moves from between funds, or if we're booking a contribution between funds, if they have already closed the cash reconciliations, we have to use an additional journal entry in order to book that because we can't disrupt those cash balances. They've already reconciled them. And so we have to use this process. And then in the new year, then we clear those. It was just an oversight that I had not cleared them.
The next internal control,
So I agree, real briefly, we're talking about significant deficiencies.
yes.
How is this considered a significant deficiency when it's clearly, I mean, what you guys have described to me doesn't rise to that level, if you will.
Well, what we're looking for is a material weakness and significant deficiency. So material weakness would be something that's going to materially misstate your financials, and that's why it's not categorized as that level. A significant deficiency is less significant than a material weakness. So really, it's just based off of this Ed Code that we categorize it as a significant deficiency.
And really what we're just, when they're talking about that, they're describing the internal control. So in other words, what internal control we have in place to ensure that we don't have this kind of oversight. And so previously where this was being handled on an annual basis, we're going to strengthen that internal control by doing it on the interim reporting basis so that I have more chances to be reviewing that. Yeah.
Moving on to the second internal control related finding. This one is over the food service program. So we look at each fund, again, their balance sheet and income statement, ending balances at June 30th. And what we found here specifically with the food service program or the cafeteria fund is that bank reconciliations don't seem that they were being performed on a monthly basis. Inventory counts weren't being performed regularly, and a meal claim reimbursement wasn't submitted for May. So there was some oversight there, and it can lead to potential misstatement of that specific fund, that cafeteria fund. We recommend that the food service and the business department go ahead, touch base, kind of get on the same page, implement proper review, reconciliation of the bank account, inventory counts, and just make sure that the meal reimbursement claims are being submitted in a timely manner. And based off the corrective action plan, it kind of already seems that the district is heading that way. They've already spoke to the food service department and kind of mitigating all of these issues,
We'd identified a number of deficiencies there and making steps to correct those.
which was brought up during the audit, and
And we're assuming by Friday, we're going to be through their audit is the financial piece. All the other stuff is we're doing with the food service people, and we're hoping that's all complete by Friday. And it's way more detailed even than this. This is a financial perspective, but we have a consultant in that's been working with Christy, and so we need to be sharp on that. And we need a lot of in-service and a lot of adjustments, and they're in place.
The third internal control related finding is regarding ASB, which was also a prior year finding, and that's why it's getting carried over to this year as well. It does seem like there has been some cleanup from prior year. In this case, the 3 sites that we visited, there were a few transactions that involved deposits or cash collections that didn't have adequate supporting documentation. So in that case, we're looking for supporting documentation from the point of collection all the way up to the deposit, whether that be tally sheets for some sort of bake sale, the deposit sheet itself, and just make sure that bank reconciliations and statements are being reviewed. Also, at Dr. Grove Middle School, it seems that there's not an annual budget being prepared or adopted by the student body. And again, monthly activity reports and bank reconciliations are not being submitted to the district for proper review. And through inquiry at the high school, it was disclosed that there was a potential raffle. I'm not too sure if it was an actual raffle, but I would follow up on that. We recommended that the district provide a FitMAC manual to all ASB staff, which I believe was recommended in prior year. This year, the district already contracted with FitMAT and performed some training, and that took place in October. So we will go ahead and revisit that in the spring as well. It seems like the district will revisit that in the spring as well to make sure internal controls are in place.
And when you're forced to do a lot of fundraising, the potential for problems here are always bigger. And we have to do a lot of fundraising. So there's no misconduct or anything of that impropriety. It's just they pull random things, and if there's not supporting receipts or purchase order that goes with it, it gets tagged.
And you have so many different entities
Yeah.
fundraising. You know, you have parents sometimes, you have kids, you have teachers, you
Right.
have, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I've never known a district that didn't always have some finding in student body. I mean, there's always findings in student body.
And the higher you go, the more the more you have of them.
So this is very common.
Oh,
Very
the
common.
student body is.
And the only reason I ask that is because in my tenure on the board, it's been in every one of your reports.
And the problem with it is once it becomes a finding, any little thing we find is going to keep it as a finding going forward. So it is hard to clean up, but it is possible. I guess it just depends on our sample and what we select, and we always seem to select those ones. They always tell us.
We can
just
provide
like
you a
this.
sample.
Yeah, that would be nice.
That's what keeping Nikki from getting an A+.
She's working hard, I can see it. So next page is blank because there was no findings regarding the federal award section. The next page is starting with the state awards or state compliance area. Independent study is very much like ASB. I feel like there's always a finding with this area. So we take, because it's material to the district, we look at both short-term independent study and long-term independent study. So with the short-term independent study at the 3 sites, it seems that at 2 sites, there were contracts that were signed after the end date. So contracts are supposed to be signed on or before the start date. And then at the middle school, 5 out of the 5 agreements that we looked at, they were either missing a required signature or some sort of dating from the required parties. So what I mean by a required signature, it's from a parent or guardian, the child or the pupil, and the supervising teacher. In this case, oh, and for long-term independent study, excuse me, at the high school, There were work samples and teacher evaluations that were not provided for 3 out of the 10 students that we looked at enrolled in this program. So this would just cause a loss of ADA or unallowable ADA. So on the next page, you can see we have question cost related to this finding, and it was a calculated total of 51 attendance days that were overstated to those students in that program, which generated a question cost of about $3,000.
So does that translate into a real cost to the district?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So here we recommend that the district implement adequate procedures over this program, make sure, those master agreements are being signed by all parties, making sure work samples are being collected and obtained on file for us to review. And then also making sure that there's some sort of teacher evaluation indicating how many attendance days the student was credited. That way we can trace it back to the attendance system for accuracy. And the issue with this is in 18-19 year, the district tried something a little new. Whereas before there was, I believe, 1 or 2 independent study teachers. There was a few more involved last in 18-19 year. And it seems like in 19-20 year, they went back to just that 1 or 2 full-time independent study teacher.
Good plan, but it didn't quite work as well as we had hoped. We had too many people involved in the program. And so we've scaled back to 2 people doing it instead of about 6. And it's their primary. It's not their secondary thing they were doing, so.
Okay.
All right, the next one is right below that independent study finding. This one is related to the after-school program. Also a very common one in 18-19 year with all the emergency waiver days going on. I wanted to go ahead and point that out. I feel like I came across issues pretty much at every district up here up north. But here what we do is we look at the attendance submitted to the CDE for this program. We look at that report and then we trace it back to some sort of source documentation. So that would be however the district or the program is keeping track of their attendance. In this case, they use Excel. So we also look at the Excel and trace that attendance back to sign in and out sheets. So what we noted here is specifically for the middle school for the month of December, that's the month that we tested. The attendance on the state report didn't reconcile back to that Excel spreadsheet. So there was, I want to say an understatement. Yeah, an understatement of 36 attendance days that were reported to the CDE. We also selected a sample of 25 students and traced back their attendance from the Excel down to the sign in and out sheets. And there we noted there was some discrepancies reconciling those students' attendance. So 12 out of 25 students didn't reconcile back to those sheets, which resulted in an understatement of 10 attendance days. And of those 25 students, 3 did not have a signed early release form on file for their reason of leaving the program early. So there's quite a few components we look at with this ACES program. Here we recommend that the district provide oversight and training to staff responsible for reconciling these attendance reports just to ensure that attendance is being reported to the state properly. And the district's corrective action plan is they will work with the county to ensure that ACES staff are appropriately trained on attendance reporting and required documentation.
It's Kids Club.
Pardon?
Kids Club.
Yeah.
Who is our liaison person who works with them, or do we have one?
Well,
Because
we
they are
all-
under our umbrella.
yes, I mean, I think many of us are in contact with them in different
I see.
capacities. So I've not previously been involved in any of the attendance stuff. And it sounded like this is a one-time thing for us. We have not had this one before. So I'm hoping that if we just can get some additional training in that we won't see a repeat on these.
Tina Stanley is our program coordinator at Kids Club, and Chris Wagner is our overall ACES program for the district coordinator.
Right, they're the
Chris.
employees of Kids Club.
So is there a process for reconciling this data?
I don't know, I would have to talk to Chris, because it's not something that we handle at Bechtel. But I know that they use attendance, I know how they do their attendance. So, but sometimes kids don't sign in.
The ACES program is very particular about keeping your books and
Yeah,
signings
yeah.
and all the papers. Oh my gosh. I used to be in
It's
charge
hard
of
to-
that in the district, and
It's hard
it's a
to,
headache, but you have to
herd
have
cats
everything
every
all
day.
the time.
And this is an unusual combination of program and facility things they talk to me about, financial things they talk to Nikki, kid things they talk to the principal involved, the site principal, and it's run through the county. And so that's one more layer of it, that, and they're employees of Kids Club, so. It's kind of convoluted, but it's a great program.
Is there a financial impact to this?
There isn't.
So their attendance is different, whereas we receive per attendance revenue, they receive a grant. And so I guess it's just if we had continued problems, we could potentially be risking future approval of a grant or something, is that?
Yeah, I believe it only triggers some sort of financial impact if the program didn't maintain 85% attendance. And
Right.
it doesn't trigger, I feel like none of them ever do,
Right.
so there'll
Right.
never be a question cost.
Okay.
Excuse me. The last state compliance related finding is regarding unduplicated pupil count. So here we look at the CalPADS report and we select a sample based off of students who are designated solely EL or free and reduced. So there are 3 different tests that we perform. For the first test, 4 of 8 students who were categorized or classified as EL did not have proper supporting documentation to support their designation. The second test, 1 of 13 students who were designated as free and reduced only, so not EL or direct cert, anything like that, did not have proper supporting documentation for their designation as well. So what we do here is we extrapolate the error rate across the population for English learners or free and reduced only. And by doing so, we extrapolated an error rate, total students who were misdesignated as 31. So we need to deduct that from your LCFF count. And this one unfortunately does trigger a question cost, and that was calculated at $56,000.
And that's the issue with unduplicated is they can't be, they've got to be one of those and only counted as one of those. Because a student could be all 3.
Okay.
And that's one of those, to be honest with you, EL is our biggest issue in this area. And it comes with about redesignating and not redesignating, when you do it, and do they qualify. So we have our people, in fact, are going tomorrow or Thursday or Friday. They're going to EL about this redesignation and tagging it correctly and how to do it, because it needs to be solid, because it does adjust our unduplicated count.
So you pretty much stated your corrective action plan. So staff responsible are getting the appropriate training for both.
I didn't want to go soapbox on the ridiculousness of ADA, but
And lastly, the pages following are prior year findings that were required to provide a status update. So some of these I've already touched base on. Prior year, there was a student body fund, so it gives you a reference to this year's finding. The next one was regarding the school accountability report cards. That one was cleared this year. Okay, that one was done. The next one is unduplicated, so that was, again, a prior year finding that was also a current year finding. And that's it.
Going back to the unduplicated,
Mhm.
you take a sample and then you extrapolate based on that sample? No,
The error rate,
right?
basically, yes.
So it totals basically a cost to the district of $56,000 and change.
Mhm.
If the district was to go back and actually do a calculation.
100%.
100%. And if that was different from what you came up with, what would be, is there a benefit to doing that?
There is a benefit. I know there's an appeals process that I can go ahead and provide Nikki information with. I'm not too sure of the time frame of the process or what needs to be submitted, but I know that there is an appeals process for any finding that is within an audit report.
That would be through the state.
Yes.
And we've done that on one of the free and reduced. We went through and got the proper documentation.
Was there-
Well, yeah, we were able to clear that before we filed the report.
Before we file.
Now, is there a risk if we go through a process like that and then they're looking at everything and go the other direction, if they were to capture more issues through that process, then does that give them an opportunity to increase the question costs?
I believe so, but if you're doing an internal audit, I think you would be able to determine whether it's going to be beneficial or not. I think overall, regardless, it should be done, just so if you want to start clear and you're already training the appropriate staff who's doing this EL designation, free and reduced designation, kind of just starting clean and, properly designating pupils and health hazard, in the health hazard.
That makes good sense.
Was there an issue with testing all the EL students on a yearly basis? That was part of one of the recommendations.
There isn't an issue with testing. You either qualify to be tested or not.
Well, it's just part of the recommendation that everyone get tested on a yearly basis. I was just curious if we did not.
I'm not too clear on what the issues were, but it could have been either maybe a student was missed during testing, or maybe they weren't here and they never were followed up and received testing, or students who were designated in prior years, but for some reason they're still populating in CalPADS. And we see that sometimes the two systems aren't speaking. So
Some of this is technology-based issues, for
and
sure.
that's typically the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
It's also an issue of who do we pin this on? Who gets to monitor this on a daily basis or monthly basis? Because EL goes all over the district.
Right. I don't know, I just look at it.
It's just one of those, it's a very difficult thing to be 100% on.
Right, but
Yeah,
I'd like to see a lot smaller number than $56,000.
so would I.
Also in 18-19 year, they switched it up on you guys and changed the testing
Mhm.
timeframe of EL students, so.
No, they changed something on us, I can't believe that.
You don't,
But then,
Every year, holy cow, so hard to stay on top of it.
So then part of what's being said is that if the testing wasn't done within the time block, then those kids aren't considered tested, right? Isn't that kind of how it worked?
kind of because we need that support to verify that they were correctly designated.
Yeah, and I understood that there was some issue about that at some sites. The other thing I wanted to know about was the unduplicated costs. Like, I understood from a long while back that certain types of students rated higher or lower on the amount of money they generated. And does that still happen with this? I mean, if you're not allowed to unduplicate, can you decide that I have a kid that qualifies for all three? I can only pick one. So this one generates the most money and this one generates less, so I'll make sure I generate all of these in this group first? Or does that not be an
No.
issue
No.
anymore?
It just goes to your total percentage of unduplicated.
So we're counting students and not the amount that they generate,
Yeah,
so to
they're
speak.
not generating different amounts.
Difference amounts.
Yeah,
Whether I'm
they're-
free or reduced or EL doesn't matter in the funding we receive, it's identical. It's part of the,
Oh,
what's our percentage of students?
And the reason they call it the unduplicated essentially is because you can qualify those 3 different ways, but many of our students fall into multiple of those categories.
Exactly.
You can't count them more than once.
Then once.
And so that ensures, in fact, that we're getting that same amount for each of those students.
Oh, okay, that's, I needed to check.
I mean,
Thanks.
just by the nature of our demographics, 2/3 of the students would be free and reduced. Well, 2/3 of the people in the other 2 categories are probably free and reduced also. But it doesn't mean that we get X amount more because of that. It is your total population of percentage of kids who qualify as an unduplicated means you're only qualifying once, not 3 times.
The only difference in terms, like if we talk about the rates, so when the unduplicated is driving the supplemental and concentration grants, and in terms of how we use those dollars, that's really all rolled together. But in terms of how the state does their calculation, those are actually 2 separate grants. So there's the supplemental grant, there's the concentration grant. And the supplemental grant is on all of your students who are in that unduplicated count. The concentration grant is only added on if a district has an unduplicated count over a certain percentage.
55%.
And so then, and it's only applied to the number of unduplicated students over that percentage. But that is all of that, so that calculation happens, and those dollars come in and they're aggregated and they're used in an equivalent manner. So it's not like we say, this student is the one that kicks us over that threshold and now we're attributing more dollars to that particular student. It just brings in more revenue for our LCAP. And then we use it across the board.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Thanks.
And one of the reasons I have her come in is because I want the transparency of, she's not, in a lot of districts, Nikki would just present the audit. I like to have the people who did the audit come in because board members can literally ask them anything about what you see.
Page 5.
And there you go.
I'm just curious about the, what is deferred outflows of resources, deferred inflows of resources?
You know what? I'm just starting, yeah. This one I have troubles with. I'm just starting to get into the whole long-term liabilities and OPEB and all of that. So, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. I'll take it. I'll wait for an explanation from staff.
So I honestly wouldn't be able to answer this right offhand either because what happens.
It was a new term to me too, and I've been looking at financial statements in a variety of different ways for
Right.
30 years, and so
And
this one was new.
They take our financial statements in the way that we hold them and manage them and operate them on a day-to-day basis, and they convert them into various things that are required by the state, including, like you said, adding in aspects of like the STRS we have and the retirement actuarial data and things of that nature. So this is not familiar to how I use this information, and I also would have to go back and check and report back to you.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it does have to do with the pensions and OPEB. So the GASB 68, GASB 75, it's kind of calculated with those 2 aspects. That's what I consider.
And the good news is we have an unqualified audit, which means that the folks in our business department are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it was verified by an outside firm that had no connection to us, full random stuff. And that's a good thing for us. It's good for me, it's good for you, and it's reassuring to Nikki that she's doing the right stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Review of negotiation proposal, or I guess our sunshine clause.
I put together a sunshine clause. The purpose of this is not to exchange with WTA sunshine agreements that we're going to talk about, is to put it out to give the public a chance to review it, to get input from public. Is there anything that people are concerned that we're not talking about, or we should talk more about, or should have a different opinion on? And that's a public document that anybody can have. I'm assuming next month that WTA will come with theirs, and we will look at theirs as well. They've seen ours already, so they have that as well. So again, it's about nothing to hide, and if somebody wants to comment, they can come and comment. It's kind of like the first official act of pre-negotiations is to sunshine a document to the public, then exchange sunshine the next time, and then we set dates from there. So, and we had some pretty lively discussion in ours, so I'm sure that WTA had lively discussions when they're putting theirs together. So, kind of part of the process.
Okay. Calendar drafts. We saw calendar drafts for the next 3 years.
Right. And what I sent you was our calendar rolled over. What it looks like if we just did what we did. Since then, is it Tuesday or Monday or Tuesday? Monday I got some from WTA, and I looked at those, and there's only a couple issues on theirs that I have to really work with them about. One has to do with New Year's. There's a nationally recognized holiday is the Monday after New Year's. When it falls on a Saturday or Sunday, that Monday is a nationally recognized Ed Code holiday. And so, although the teachers could work that day, CSEA, that's one of their holidays. And so we can't really use that as a school day. It affects every CSEA employee. So in that case, one of the things we talked about was we were going to start like on a Wednesday. We might have to start on a Tuesday and still have that as a holiday day. But New Year's was the one issue that we had in the second and third year. It was fine in the first year. In the other issue we had that we have to look at is we have to have a conversation about Halloween, because Halloween's great next year. It's on a Saturday. Works really well. The next year, Halloween is on a Sunday. That means Monday, traditionally they've done in-service on the day after Halloween. Apparently the kids are too loaded up with sugar to come to school. I'm not part of that mindset. It also impacts in the third year as well. My only issue with that is, if we do look at a calendar that puts that in there, I really want to take a look at ADA at what happens the day after Halloween. Because if ADA is 50%, that's not good. Now, I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm trying to get into that mindset. I come from a world where Halloween is done by community. It's always a Saturday, and it's always 4 to 8. They don't use the 31st. They have community Halloween that they celebrate, so the kids go around town with their parents on Saturday. So it's a Saturday event for families instead of what day happens to be the 31st. I really like it when it's scheduled like that. I think it's good for parents and people who want to hand out stuff. But it's not that way here. So if we do a calendar that has that in there, we really need to take a look at what happens the day after Halloween. In the third year out, Halloween is actually a Monday. And so in their proposal, Tuesday we're in school. We're in school Monday and Tuesday, Halloween and the day after. So again, I'm not opposed to that. I don't have a real lot of hang-ups in calendar. I'm going to be here anyway. But that's something we need to take a look at. And, I'm going to work with these guys to sort that out. But yeah, their calendar looked good. I didn't have any real issues with that at all.
One of the issues that came up very early after the last calendar was approved, was some pushback from some parents with respect to the early release Tuesdays.
And that's where I'm headed now.
Okay.
In regards to Tuesdays, what I'm trying to do is to look, Tuesdays are a unique problem for the district. They're mostly problematic at the high school. The high school is the place where they have the most amount of time they have to use for instruction. A year ago, we ran into, we couldn't do Tuesdays all through May and June because we were too short in time. So one of the things that I'm looking at, I'm trying to work this out with Maddie. What would happen if Tuesdays were K-8? The high school could stay on its normal schedule of what they have right now. But the high school doesn't need Tuesdays the way K-8 does. Because, like, Matthew Alanis next door teaches geometry. He's like the only one who teaches it. We don't need to have a geometry meeting. He's the only person there. The high school has integrated preps in their day. So they have opportunities the other buildings don't. Plus, they have a limited scope of what they teach. And so Mike is just fine with the every other scenario the way it is now in the calendar. It works great for the high school. Doesn't work so well at the middle school. They could use some more. They maybe don't need the full complement, but it has to be an either or situation. K-5 would like to have them all the time. So I'm trying to work with transportation to see if we can do a K-8 minimum day, and 9-12, for most of those, will still be in session. Because remember, the high school also has an exam schedule that impacts that. At the end of a trimester, they end on a Thursday like at 1 o'clock. Friday, they end like at 11:30. So they have a unique schedule already, and they have the most instructional minutes they have to get. So Sanhedrin in the high school have a different scenario than K-8. So here's kind of what it would look like. We would run, because we run two sets of buses. We run elementary buses and secondary buses. Our secondary drivers would go do their middle school run and then have to come back and do a high school run. Can they hit that in time to hit the second run? That's the first question. Secondly is, how are we going to make that fair for the drivers so these two high school drivers don't get over-houred compared to the other ones? And so tomorrow they're having a meeting in transportation to kind of sort through that. And there are lots of ways to do it. They could do it supplemental pay, they could do it bid it like it's a run. They're going to work through that. They know their business better than I need to know their business. I need to know, can we do it? And so they're looking at trying to establish K-8 minimum day, high school, stay on their current calendar. So, and that's the issue. Everybody uses them differently. I kind of look at the days when we use those minimum days. Brookside uses them really well. Blosser, okay. Middle school wouldn't need to necessarily have the same amount, especially if we make some of the other changes we've talked about at middle school. But it makes sense to package them together as K-8. The high school's its own entity. And so I will get a complaint from somebody, I'm sure, because it's not possible not to, but I'll have somebody who says, my high school kid watches my other kid, my younger kid when we have minimum day. And that'll happen 8 or 10 times where they're not there. But I can't wag the dog that way. So this really needs to be about instructional minutes. What works at high school? You know, calculus is different than kindergarten. And this is one of those examples, minimum day, where we need to make a change.
Okay.
So I will have that figured out prior to our next board meeting. But if I can work it out, that would be the plan, is to go to Tuesday, K-8, and then the high school remain on their current schedule with minimum days. Because their current schedule reflects exam days and days that work at the high school a minimum day. Their minimum days are on Tuesday, just like everybody else, except on exams.
Right.
So it's not like they're gonna have a Wednesday morning early thing or anything. No, they're gonna stay on Tuesday minimum days, just half as many.
And that's midterms and finals, talking about the high school.
Yeah, it's basically the first, March 1st and 2nd, and the last 2 days of school. And in November, it's usually the second week of November, when high school will have other exams. So, but that's the plan. I need to see if it works. This is a good time to experiment to see, can we make adjustments to do what's right at the age level, grade level? One size just doesn't always fit all.
And so then what we're gonna end up with next month is a calendar that's some sort of a combination or whatever between WTA, CSEA, and the administration, and that's what we're gonna look at to decide?
Yep.
Okay, so it'll be one 3-page deal, not three 3-page deals?
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure the issues, we'll have to sort through those issues. And the issue for Dan is that Dan can't ask CSEA to work on the Monday after New Year's. That's an Ed Code nationally recognized holiday that, I'll give you an example. Even if somebody works a 180-day school year, like you're a classroom paraprofessional, you still get paid for a holiday day of New Year's. Well, we can't just randomly say, well, we're just going to pay you for a day. It has to be noted as a date. And that date next year, I think, is January 2nd. Okay, so that has to be a non-instructional day. We can't operate without CSEA. It's not like we can have school without them.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, and then my other just that came up is that I noticed all of these calendar days have the kids coming to school. Next year it looks like Tuesday, but the other days, and I don't know why I thought one was Monday. Hold on, I have to relook. But yeah,
One was Wednesday. And
yeah, I didn't see any that were going to start on a Wednesday or anything like that, and I just sort of thought that that was something that had come up from the past too, that in especially elementary schools, it's especially difficult when the week is so long and all of the days are, you know. But I guess what these look like is that days would start, the first day of school for all three of these would have been the Tuesday, and that'd be a short one at least for the K-8s, right? Is that kind of what?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
If I may speak, the calendars that are in your binders were before we received anything from WTA. So what we're
Okay.
looking
Well,
at
that's
now
what I thought.
is.
Yeah.
I just was,
Just a
okay.
sample, it's a draft.
Yeah, no, that, I just
Yeah, so we're
was
pretty far
curious
off from
that,
now.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, it just, I didn't hear anything about, and there's a possibility schools might start later in the week or whatever, and I just was
I
checking.
when WTA gave me theirs,
Uh-huh.
Linda and Trina are my calendar counters for me.
Yeah,
And so they took it and put it into the Excel document that you see,
mhm.
and then we counted up the days, and that's where we found out about the New Year's, and we talked about the day after Halloween. So I have those already done. I didn't send them out before the meeting because I didn't want to confuse the issue and have 6 calendars.
Well, yeah, and it's hard to see that stuff just before we come here.
But we'll work that date, those dates out. It's not a big deal. I think that they'll understand that. I know CSEA assumes their folks are gonna get paid for New Year's. So we'll work those out. We're very, calendar, we're very close. My only parameters was that I do not want to go late into June because the majority of the buildings are not air conditioned, and I don't want to start early in August for the exact same reason. So we kind of try and compact between 3rd week of August to 2nd week of June. And when you do that, it's pretty common. There's not a lot of wiggle room there.
Okay.
Early start time versus 8:30? How are we going to stack up with that? That goes into effect in 2022?
I believe Aren't we considered a small school?
We are, we have to get a ruling on, are we going to be considered rural?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we're considered rural,
Then
then
we're
it's
exempt.
optional. Especially in high school, I have a hard time, even though I understand the research. The problem is when they turn 19 and go out to their job, they don't get to start at 8:30 because they feel like they're more ready to work then. So I don't know, I think that's a fad thing, and yeah, I mean, we could start at noon and go to 7 o'clock at night and they'd be more in tune. Well, yeah, unfortunately, life doesn't work that way, which they'll find out soon after graduation.
Starting at 8:30 just means we can stay up a little later,
Yeah.
or a little longer.
I'm hoping we can hit the exempt on that based on being rural.
Okay.
And the issue is it gonna be done on size or is it gonna be done on location? We're hoping location. Ukiah is really hoping it's on location too.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Anything further? Dan? You're up.
Tessa?
Or pardon me, Tessa, excuse me.
I'll go opposite.
You're not staying?
Probably gotta go.
Oh, all right.
It's been exactly 10 school days since I last saw you, and 7 of those were finishing up all the winter programs and holiday parties and all of that. So technically, there's been 3 days of anything new happening, and praise God, there hasn't really been anything other than working on calendars, so I don't have a report other than that.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Tessa.
Now, Dan.
Yeah, school got started again. Everybody was here to make it ready for all the little people to come. And so, not a lot's been happening. Things are kind of calm.
Oh, I think things are happening. I stopped in the wood shop. I saw that project we worked on, got done. I appreciate that, thank you.
That happened when we ended up doing another one, and they brought a whole truckload of stuff and said, let's do it all at once. So I stayed late and we did it.
Perfect,
So
thank you.
that's what you do in the real world when you get up early.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of stuff gets done and things are going along all right.
Very good, thank you.
So I'm curious about the cafeterias, did they get moved or changed or whatever? Okay, I didn't
We-
hear that they did, but I
No.
must have misunderstood.
The
I
plan
thought,
for the cafeteria is that we're talking about moving the 2 kitchens to
Right.
produce. We're not having any discussion until we're through our audit. Friday will be
Okay.
through our audit.
oh, okay.
And I don't want to talk about 2 issues at the same time. I want to have our audit cleaned up and done. Then I'm going to meet with Christy and her entire group, and Dan and whomever can attend. And we're going to talk about how do we look, we have less than half a year left. Let's look at how we can restructure this and be productive, and we'll have this time frame to do it. And so, really it's coming from the employees. We're not laying anybody off, we're not doing any of those things. We need to restructure to become more efficient financially. We spend too much money in food service that we need to work on. And there's some ways to do that, and the consultant we hired would help us. Alex and I went and looked at Kelseyville. Some of the things they do would work really well here. We're producing out of 4 kitchens.
Right.
Producing out of 2 makes a lot of sense. And in particular, if you look at Brookside's kitchen, literally Brookside's kitchen has 5 patches on the water line that comes from the road to the kitchen. There are 5 patches in that line.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta keep the door open to let the heat out because the compressor's so loud and hot. It's the freezer's ancient with an ice mountain in it. So it's really worn out.
Okay.
And Bechtel is the other older kitchen. The best 2 kitchens in the district are Blosser and the high school, which could easily produce enough for 2 buildings. So that's kind of the goal.
Right, so probably though, after your meeting on Friday, there will still have to be at least a month or so.
Oh, yeah.
What do you figure
Oh,
before
yeah,
anybody makes
easily.
any
It's
major
gonna take some
changes?
time.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I was thinking that, but some people seem to think that it was like imminent change.
No.
And I just, you know, it didn't make sense, and I didn't see anything happen over the holiday.
No,
and so
Dan and I have been talking this all along, that this is as soon as we get through the audit process, we gotta come together. Again, they know their business better than I know their business.
Oh,
And so I want them to be part of the solution,
good.
but we have to become more economical. It's in their best interest and everybody's. That's money not on the table to do a lot of things.
Right.
That we need to
I know how big
fix.
that was. Okay. Okay, thanks.
I'll add that Mark has been open with me about all this, and I've talked with a couple folks from the kitchen staffs, and I've also heard through the grapevine that there's all the campfire stuff going on, that people would rather talk campfire, and I reached out, and I told them that I'm willing to sit down anytime. I don't care when it is, that we could all get in a room and talk about this, because I will tell you everything that Mark has told me, and I have gotten no reply on it. And so I understand that things are gonna happen, things may happen, but until you have a guideline or somewhere to go from, to talk about what's going on, a whole lot of talk just turns into a whole lot of talk and a whole lot of problems if we don't have the facts on what we're gonna do. So we have reached out, nobody's reached out back, and so I'm kind of taking it at that, and then when we have our meeting, everybody will be sitting there, and then we can talk some more.
Yeah, some of that talk is just a bit premature, when it boils down to, because we basically don't have all the details from the consultant yet.
Right.
And quite frankly, when Mark and I and Christy went to Kelseyville, we got a glimpse into a really well-run operation, but it basically opened our eyes to, there's a lot that we simply don't know, because we're not experts in that arena, and that's the reason why we ended up with a consultant to help get us kind of lined out, so that, one, our future audits don't identify significant problems like what we just are going through, and in looking at their model over there, though it's not identical to what we would want to do here, it certainly opened our eyes to different ways that we can both purchase product and different ways that we can provide meals to the students it's much more efficient and probably a better product in the end. So,
Yeah.
It all comes down to show me the money.
right.
I mean, Kelseyville puts out 250 to 300 more meals a day than we do
Out of one site.
out of one site, and they have a $30,000 overrun cost that general fund has to make up. Willits puts out 300 less, and we have a $230,000 overrun cost. So,
We're not going to be able to close that gap
No.
like that, but we are going to be able to make significant inroads to closing that gap.
right.
The fact that we're going to operate out of two sites is going to make it a little bit more expensive than what Kelseyville's doing, but it doesn't make sense for us to operate out of a single site because our single site simply doesn't have the capacity, floor space, equipment to be able to do that, whereas theirs does.
And is in disrepair on top.
Correct. So,
Ours is
Yeah.
there.
but we did learn that there's a lot of things that we could be doing, and once the audit's done, hopefully we'll be moving towards doing a number of those things. And each one of those will incrementally impact the amount of money that we're spending on food service.
And the human challenge is always the greatest challenge. To constantly be on the edge of doing better is a mindset. And that has to be trained into people to constantly be on the edge of doing better.
Yeah, the frustration also comes from, it's going to take some change. Some of that change is some people are going to welcome it, some people aren't. Change always has its difficulties. And it's coming. People got to kind of get behind the idea that change is coming. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen. Try to get behind it.
There are no layoffs and there are no pay cuts involved in our conversation. That's not on the table. This is about reorganizing to be more efficient, not pay cuts, not layoffs. We're not downsizing program people. We're doing it in a different fashion to be more productive, and it'll pay huge dividends.
Yeah, I think most of what I hear about doesn't have anything to do with pay cuts or unemployment. Most of it, it's just reorganizational concerns.
Territory.
Okay, it is sort of that, more
Yeah.
that I,
Yep.
you know, but people I talk to are relatively limited. I mean, you know, I don't talk to all 15 or 20 of the school food service types, you know, I talk to about 8, maybe 9.
Yep.
And it is a matter of not necessarily being involved in meetings because they don't see the validity or they don't find it convenient or whatever is the issue. It may just be a matter of convenience. I'm easy to find and my blocks are not usually 6 to 4.
Yeah, you seem to be pretty in touch with how the CACA is doing stuff and
I
how the
work at
people
that,
are.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, it's a matter of getting everybody on board and working it out and being open-minded to try to, if change comes, it's better to be involved in it
Yes.
than to not be involved in it. And that's the best part. And it's better, and it's always best to not speculate. It's always best to wait and understand the reality of things and then work within that.
Board comments. We'll start with Paul.
Okay, I have a lot to do. Well, maybe not a whole lot. I did notice, I just didn't want any misunderstandings, that there's a little thing in the board agenda of what happened last month. I even received a couple of, oh wow. I am still not talking to people who are real pro tax increases, okay? I have explained to a number of people that after the first request for taxes, you know, the 4 million or whatever that the bonds will go out for, will then not exist if our economy is not continuing to improve. But the agenda minutes or the agenda summary of last month's deal sort of sounded like things were really getting great on the people that I talked to, but that was a little misleading. It's not a big deal, it's just that I haven't changed any minds of anyone that this is a good deal, but I think I've been working at softening the blow a little bit. If things don't change, then naturally, I mean, if things get worse, then there won't be another request for more bonds for that 3 or 4 year increment, you know. But just so that you understand, you know. Anyway, and that's only because I like understandings. The other thing that's come up is that I had some questions from last month that didn't get put on the agenda, and I'm really hoping that we get those worked out within the next couple of weeks. In particular, I'm very concerned with the security system, and I'm also concerned with, well, the other things that I asked about. So I'm hoping that if the security system, whether it does or doesn't get worked out with my understanding it, I'd like to see it on the agenda next month. The school's camera security system. I want to be able to discuss it and have an understanding of people's opinions or whatever else, but there are serious issues as far as I'm concerned, and we need to get them worked out. And I think publicly is the best plan.
Yeah, just so you're clear, we can discuss any topic at any time during the board meeting.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be an agendized item.
And that's what I understand, which is why I can put it in my report or at the end of the deal, stand at the podium and talk to you as a member of the public.
In order for us to take a vote on it, take action on it, it needs to be an agendized item.
And that's exactly my
So
thought.
as a suggestion, with respect to those 3 items, you were looking at possible policy changes. Now, if you go to Gamut Online, which is under documents on the Willis Unified School District website, you'll be able to find all of the current policies and board policies, which includes, in some cases, those things that you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
And then my suggestion would be that you research those policies that you'd like to consider changing and come back to the board with a suggestion for whatever changes you'd like to make.
When it becomes a part of the agenda, before I
Well,
even
yeah.
discuss it?
Well, we can discuss it at any time, but I would suggest you bring your suggestions back to a board meeting, and then we'll see if the consensus of the board is that we want to take action on it, then we would agendize it and take action on it.
Okay, I sort of think I understand that.
So basically, you're stuck doing some research in advance.
Well, yeah. I did look for one of them and I didn't find any policy at all, so I'm not sure it exists. But that, I also thought probably needed closed sessioning more than it needed publicly. but, I'll find out. But yeah, I'll look at the Gambit thing. Okey doke, anyway, that was a deal. I also, it seems like every time lately I'm starting to compliment you, Marie, and I don't mean it to look kind of only you. It's just that there were two things I was especially happy, three sort of, but last month I hit on the one about the AR reward system, and the feedback I got from my niece and a couple of other people, they loved the whole idea of doing their reading and going to a movie that was so cool. And according to my niece, now everyone's going to read more because they know how cool it was. So that's a big deal.
Good.
Middle school has just been a question for everyone, and it's a tough deal in my head, and so I think that's a big deal. I also really appreciated the part of your weekly letter you send out that encouraged everyone to come to board meetings, that these were the issues to be discussed, and I think it's a good idea for you all to attend. I thought that was really cool. Anyway, and then I do ask around, especially in the communities that I'm the most involved with, and one in particular, which is limited English speakers generally. And it's a good thing that I am finding that some of the greatest fears that seemed to be issues a few years back are finally now not being the big issues anymore. And I don't know everything it's attributed to, except that I do know that people feel a little more comfortable going to your school and speaking with you and speaking with other members of the staff. And I do know that your whole 8th grade changed and there's a turnover sometimes, but at the same time, I don't see that much change in administration. But whatever it is, it's a good deal. Either the slow trickling of information or, I don't know, I really don't, but whatever. That's a big deal too, so thanks. I really like that.
Thank you.
And your parent night, I only knew one parent who went to the one I thought everyone should have gone to about feeling anxious and everything else. Okay, well, I didn't even know when it was, so I couldn't really fault all these people that weren't there. But I do know about the next one, and I do expect that it will have a good attendance. Or I'm hoping, I don't know. But anyway, that's a good thing that you're putting those 3 nights on, and people aren't feeling like they're targeted to attend. Sometimes Brookside a long while back used to offer classes, but many of the parents seem targeted to need to attend. And this just seems like, no, it's out there, drop by. And hopefully that's what's making it be more smooth or whatever. But anyway, so that's a big deal, and that's the last I have to say. Okay.
Thank you. Jean?
I just wanted to apologize for missing last month's board meeting. I was sick and I'm retired and I feel like I need to take care of myself when I'm sick and not go spreading my germs around. So I stayed home and took care of myself.
Payroll deduction.
And I noticed that Willits Weekly is not here, and I just wanted to bring up the AB5, the gig economy bill that was passed and in the state of California, and how it's impacting communities like Willits. And Willits Weekly may not be able to continue to be published under the current gig economy rules. So anyway, I just noticed they weren't here, and I just wanted, they were a wonderful asset in this community. So.
And that bill is in regards to being contract employees.
And Cora is actually Willits News.
Yeah, she's Willits News, which has been a fake situation. Anyway, and I also wanted to remind everybody that I think it's on the 12th that that there's a presentation on drug use amongst youth in the community. I think it's on the 12th, next Tuesday, is it?
That's going to be in the Arts Building?
And that's the Arts Building upstairs, and there's going to be 4 presenters, and it's a really important. I don't.
Did they?
There's flyers also, but I'll find out and let you know, Robert.
Is there a reason that's held there as opposed to right here, for example?
No, I think they wanted to have an off-school premise because they don't want it to be just about school.
Okay.
I think there's a mentality of, the drug use at school isn't as problematic as the drug use outside of school. And they wanted to have an open venue that wasn't a school setting.
Okay.
They didn't want to make it exclusively all about school.
I think the Howard Foundation puts on those monthly presentations, and they always have them at the Art Center. So,
Yeah, because I offered, but they said they were comfortable being.
Okay,
that's about it for me.
Mr. Sheldon.
That's great. I got to attend some of the winter events at the different schools, and that was very nice. It's always wonderful to see our kids performing. I hope everyone had a great winter break, and Happy New Year. That's it for me.
Thanks, Robert.
So I just pulled up the flyer. It's Tuesday, January 14th, 5:30 to 7 p.m. for the Youth and Drugs, the Slippery Slope, a community prevention forum. Thank you, Tina.
Yeah, I said
Thank you,
everybody.
Tessa.
Thank you, Tessa.
I've got nothing to report.
Well, for most people, winter is winter, but for me, it's always been wrestling season. So I had the opportunity to follow the varsity boys wrestling team to Healdsburg, to the Healdsburg tournament. And as with all of the sports I've seen this year, I was impressed with the sportsmanship that was displayed by our coaches and our athletes. And I felt a little bit old because a lot of the last names that were wrestling, I think I coached their parents. Anyway, very nice to observe our boys' teams on the road.
Any further? Yep. Mr. Westerberg.
Well, I think I have to announce that we have some esteemed guests here. We have Charlene Ford, who is our board representative for MCOE, and we have Michelle Hutchins, our county superintendent here. And are you here to share?
We just were here to say hello and to really thank your board. I really look at board members as serving in one of the most important elected positions that we have in the United States, and so I thank you for your service, really.
And it's really nice because I feel like I know almost everyone on the board, and it's just great living here and knowing the people that are doing the school governing. Thank you.
I also relocated to Willits when I won the election. I wanted to be central in the county, and my son attends Blosser Lane, and had the opportunity of being part of Mrs. Ford's presentation to the 4th grade parents, and he was 5 golden rings, and he really played well. So it's really fun to see my son participate in the schools here. So thank you for that as well.
I'm just curious where your agency stands with respect to the foreign affairs funding that's been talked about throughout the state.
We're going to be passing a resolution to support the full and fair funding. Or we're going to be asking the board to pass the resolution, so we'll see what they do.
Awesome, very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Couple things. If you look on the district's webpage, you will see a Measure G button. If you click on that, you'll see a lot of information. So if you have anybody who wants to know virtually anything about it, there are frequently asked questions. There's a slide that shows the 4-year phases and with a note on it. There are just a lot of information. And because we're a public school, it doesn't tell people to vote yes, it's factual information. And, you know, it's just like anything. We all understand that nobody wants to pay more taxes. Unfortunately, it's the only way to fix public facilities. I'll give you my little facility thing. We have, for about a year or so at Bechtel, the teachers have complained about their copier. Nikki finally twisted the arms of our vendor enough to say, okay, get us a new copier or we're gonna have to do something else. They bring in a new copier. That week, the ceiling leaks over the top of it and fried the new copier.
And actually, I just got, unfortunately, the technician did make attempts to repair it, and I did just hear back that they were unable to. So we're going to have to probably file an insurance claim.
To the
Yeah,
tune
one-
of,
I don't know yet.
What's our deductible?
The deductible is, I think, 1,000 for property. I think it's 1,000.
It's probably gonna cost us $5,000 or $6,000 to get a copier in place. Yeah. But,
So it's gonna be lots
yeah,
of
and
days.
and fix the roof before we put the new copier in.
yeah, well, we're trying that. We've already got a patch on it, and these rains are always a test for us. You know, we patch and fix the roof, and then, okay, rain, let's see if it worked. But, you know, water always wins. It's just a question of where is it coming from. And so that's kind of one of my issues is pretty obvious. We take in water every time it rains.
So we buy a lot of tarps and cover all the expensive stuff when we leave for the weekend.
But, you know, again, I understand that. I'm set to meet with a lot of civics groups. I'm gonna set up some times where I have like town hall, open forum meetings. I talk to community people all the time. I have a vote yes on G group who have no affiliation with the school whatsoever, who we're meeting with, and they're gonna set up an account and do some of that. But, you know, as I've said all along, nobody disputes the need. People dispute, do I like to pay taxes? And I understand that. But we have to do the right thing and try and get the best facility we can for our kids. And I think we've got a great plan, and we've distinguished this from previous bond. We've done all the right things. And it basically comes down to a pretty simple thing. You know, we need to know, because financially, our budget will be impacted greatly as we move on if we don't have a revenue to fix our facilities. That line item will continue to grow. And so that's our issue. We gotta make sure we deal with that.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, there is really no other source of funding for school districts to repair their buildings other than bonds. One action that you may consider at your next board meeting is passing a resolution in support of the state bond initiative that'll be at the March election as well, which is Prop 13. We'll be bringing that to the county board on Monday, asking them to, and I'll be sharing that information with your district superintendent and the other superintendents in the county tomorrow, actually. But it's a simple resolution to pass, and it would be then go, and you would be on record as passing that resolution. And then you would also be bringing a little more public attention to the state bond initiative as well. And that could provide some matching funds for Willits Unified.
Right.
With your current bond and with your potential future bond.
Yeah, we're not the Lone Ranger. Covelo and Laytonville just passed bonds. Fort Bragg, us, and Ukiah are all on the ballot. And
Anderson Valley's looking in November as well.
Anderson Valley and Mendocino. So it's not like this is Willits Unified. This is everybody. I mean, there just needs to be a process in place to fix public schools. And when STRS and healthcare skyrocket, you know, you gotta have teachers before you don't need a building if you don't have teachers. So, you know, that's kind of how we're funded.
Okay. Anything else?
No?
Okay, we're on to public comment on consent agenda items. And I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Well, I have two things on the consent agenda. One is number 5. I have some questions, and number 9, I have some questions. So if you want to either pull those or do whatever, and all the rest, I don't have a question either.
Do we need to pull them? Go ahead with your questions.
Oh, okay, well, my questions are on finances and some other stuff that came up there. We'll just start at the first one. It's on number 5, you know, it's the accountability thing. And it doesn't say which page it's on, but it's right after that little 5 in your binder. Okay. So my biggest questions kind of hit all of them at one time. There's a deal about how much each student, let me find the paper, I wrote it all down.
Oh, the total amount that's been,
Yeah, that's spent on students, you know, and there's quite a discrepancy. Most of them are all about the same. Sort of, I think I understand why a high school would be more expensive than an elementary school. I figure, and so I need some correction if I'm wrong, that it has a lot to do with how much books and supplies and stuff like that all cost. But it's like at the,
I would actually say, and this is offhand, I would have to do real analysis to check, but my guess is that a majority of those discrepancies are going to be the fact that if you look at the salary schedule, it's such a broad range. And so we have the potential that, you know, staff are getting paid at different places on the salary schedule. And that's really, you know, when you look at our budget, salaries or benefits are the biggest driver on the expenditure side. And so that would be my guess, would be when you're looking from school building to school building, you could have staff at all different places on those
it shows
salary
that in a
schedules.
separate thing though.
Yeah, well, that's an average. And,
Right.
And so, I mean, you know.
Okay, well, so for example, where it has Sherwood, it shows that the total expenditure per pupil runs about $12,350, okay, more or less. Okay, and then, but yet, at a, like Brookside, it doesn't show that.
Oh,
I mean, it shows it, it's,
So I was gonna say, there's actually another big point I would make about Sherwood, which is that they're a necessary small school, and they're actually funded very, very differently than other schools. And so it is expected that a school that size is going to have a higher expense per pupil. That is normal for a necessary small school.
okay, and so that's why the, like, I mean, it's $12,900 per student at Brookside instead of, you know, $12,348. And the salaries are different, but that's because you have experienced teachers that make more money.
Right.
You know, that part I understood. I just didn't understand I would have figured that the high school would have cost more money than the elementary schools per student, and it sort of didn't happen. And I don't understand all that.
Yeah, I'd probably have to do a deeper dive into what those differences are. You know, when I run the reports to plug into this, I do pretty aggregated data on how the expenses come in coded to school. And that would be another thing is that, you know, we do our best to code things by school. Everything has that account code, but there's always potential for if something doesn't, you know, have that school code. I don't use the school code for very much in my budget work. There's not, you know, there's not a lot that I'm doing that having those teachers coded to a specific school site is gonna, you know, change a lot. This is one of the few areas where we actually look at reporting those out by school as opposed to the whole district. So, I mean, I can do some more research to see what we can find.
No, I just was wondering about kind of the in generals for why Sanhedrin is at $9,600 per student. Now, naturally, Sanhedrin has 60-some kids, or 58, or whatever they're at right now. Oh, okay, so I would have figured that...
I could give you Sanhedrin to Sherwood's an easy one.
Oh, okay.
Because Sanhedrin operates with 2 1/4 teachers.
Uh-huh.
There are 3 teachers at Sherwood, even though they're about the same size.
Right.
All of the teachers at Sherwood are experienced teachers.
Right.
High experienced teachers. And so it's the mathematics of how much do you spend, but it's also how many students you're dividing it by. So Sanhedrin has a higher number than what Sherwood does, but the teachers, they have more staff and they have higher payroll teachers than what Sanhedrin does. Sanhedrin's operating also with a principal who's not on the same scale as the other principals, and 2 1/4 teachers.
Okay, because this one only showed 1.9. But the other thing was that it separated average teacher salaries from total expenditures per pupil. So maybe where I'm confused is, you're not
It's not
talking about
separating
materials and things that students need?
It's not separating out the teacher's salary.
Oh, this total expenditures includes the
Yes.
teacher's salary and
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
else?
So
together?
that final column where it says the
Oh,
teacher
okay.
salary, that is just an average at that school site. So it's more like, you know, the J90 report,
Yeah.
you may be familiar with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So it's more like that data where it's just a snapshot of like, here's the average at that site.
Oh, okay.
But the total expenditures divided by the pupils is inclusive of salary.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
I didn't know they were all, okay, well, and that
And
makes a
then
lot
that
of sense.
average salary
Is
is
just an
compared
extra
to
data point.
To the
state salary.
states, yeah, and, okay, well, so we're gonna fall short all the time when you
Yes.
when you use the lowest and the highest, I mean,
But
and
you're
that's at
gonna-
every school.
Those values are gonna vary no matter what.
Okay, I just didn't know they put everybody together to make an average amount for a student's expenditure. Because it was not at, I mean, you know, I looked at it 4 ways and made some calls and it still didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that's,
And
thanks.
one change in staffing, if we had a new
Well,
teacher
yeah.
at Sanhedrin, would make that number go down even further.
Right, and then I had a question when it came to like, well, no one's here, but Blosser Lane, I mean, no, it's Brookside, where they had a couple less teachers happen just recently. So then, does this report come before or after that, so that the total expenditure, I mean, it talks about being 17, 18, which I know must have been, I don't know that, I trusted it was, you know, some kind of a number mistake or something.
No, they
'cause it
actually,
says
the
it's for
SARC,
18, 19.
the SARC report is 18-19, but
Yeah.
it does have us look back at 17.
To compare the
18.
two, which is,
Yeah, and so
Okay.
there's a thing, like when I go in to enter it, it has like a warning saying, this is correct, I know you're gonna think it's wrong. Yes, use 17-18 data.
oh, okay.
So
Well,
that
then
is-
how far back in 18, 19 did you go?
I have to go back to look at my report,
Mm-hmm.
and basically that, it happens on a date, because I have to pull those reports, like
Okay.
what does it look like on that date? There's not really a good way for me to, you know, average that out like for the whole year. So when we're looking, you're talking about the teacher salary piece of it?
No, pupil, I was just only trying to compare total expenditures per pupil.
Oh, yeah.
Because
so
the other parts, I understood how that
that
could be
is
the way it
literally
was.
just looking back at the actuals for that
Okay.
whole year. And so, I mean, it's gonna include substitute costs if they get coded out to the school site. It's
Oh,
gonna get,
okay.
all of that stuff. And so,
Oh, okay.
anything that's coded out by school site obviously goes right into that pot. And then we also have a lot of expenses that don't get coded out by school site. You know, there's
Yeah, they're
various,
district costs.
district costs. And so I just try to use like, you know, a proportionate way to distribute that then across to all the sites. Because,
There's no way
Yeah.
those can be equalized.
yeah.
No, okay, well, it makes much better sense now. But I looked it over and I thought I read it and I didn't see anything that said, this is because, you know, and I could not figure that one out. Oh, okay, well, so then I no longer care about 5. And now, the one for, I need just like a concrete example, if maybe you can give me one, for the one past 18. It's closed sessions, well, there were 2 parts. Closed session is at 8 or whatever it said. And what it talks about is like, I mean, for example, the last page of it, or close to that, had to do with the board shall not disclose any information that is protected by state or federal law. In addition, no victim or alleged victim of, and it goes on and on about the Brown Act and anything unless, you wouldn't identify people unless they had been already publicly disclosed. And then right under it, it goes personnel matters, and it just says, well, there are personnel exceptions, and a closed session can't even discuss personnel exceptions.
Run it back in.
Well, it's easier to pass it to you.
Here you are.
Oh, okay, I don't know, they're not numbered, but
What
it's,
page are you on?
it doesn't tell me. it looks like this, and it's right under CF 9011, disclosure of confidential privileged information. It comes like 4 pages after, or no, it's the 3rd page,
You're on what tab?
8, where it says closed session, and it says BB and E. So I'm figuring that's some kind of just board policies as opposed to a law somewhere. But it is, I mean, it should be. It's not very far from the number 8 tab, like 3 pages.
What did you say it was, CF what?
It's under 9011, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's it, 9011?
Yeah.
And then what's in red right underneath it?
yeah, yeah. And it talks to district records, access to district records as its reference spot.
So, I mean,
So
this is
I'm
giving
just-
us clear direction that,
You don't use names publicly, which makes sense unless they're already public.
right.
Okay. And so, but maybe it's the way I read it, it seems to conflict a little with personnel matters that the board only holds closed session under the personnel exception to consider the appointment, et cetera, of people, and such a closed session shall not include discussion or action, proposed compensation, et cetera.
That would be like hiring a superintendent. You can't just do that in closed session and not disclose who you're talking about.
Okay, and you wouldn't discuss publicly or privately any of the issues that may be of concern?
You would discuss publicly who it is, the compensation and that stuff, but you wouldn't disclose personal information about the candidate.
Okay, because it says that results from the imposition of discipline, and that's a ed code thing, but.
Right, and same would be with discipline, is that, if you, generally speaking, you, as Alex always says, you discipline in private, you praise in public. I mean, that's the mentality behind all of this.
Oh, okay.
And so, if somebody, for example, had a criminal charge, it would already be in the paper.
Right.
If it were a criminal charge that requires us to dismiss them, we would say at a board meeting, we have to dismiss someone based on this, and, it's already public. There's no getting around it not being public.
Okay.
We're not held accountable to try and keep something private that's already been made public.
Okay.
But virtually all personnel matters that involve discipline are private. Right?
Yeah.
We can't discuss them outside of closed session, with the exception that if there's a hearing, the employee typically has the choice of having that hearing in closed session or having that hearing in open session. And it's entirely up to the employee.
Right. You could have an open session hearing if they chose that. That would be really rare and unusual. But there are instances where if an employee of the district publicly has something that, it's already public. And so if we take action, we have to come out of that session and say that we took action. And obviously, they all know who it was about.
And those reporting requirements are part of what's being delineated in these two new policies, most of which has been in Brown Act law for many years.
Okay, well, I was thinking back that years and years ago, there was an issue with a teacher that was hired, even though they had, later people learned, a public disclosure of committing a crime or suspected of a crime or whatever. And then they were let go from here as well. But it became an issue of, was it legal at that time for them to, for the board, et cetera, to speak out? And this just reminded me of that, and I thought, well, you have to speak out on some things, but I wasn't exactly certain how that related.
And it's very tenuous for boards when you have that. If you have an employee who has publicly been charged with something, and because they're over 18...
In another district, though.
It doesn't matter where it is.
Okay.
If they've been publicly charged and it's a public record and all that stuff, it comes out. And so, you know, in those cases, you have to presume innocence until found guilty.
Exactly.
And so that's where most of the rub comes with this, is that if we employed a teacher, for example, who had some criminal activity that they were being taken to court on, well, we can't presume they're guilty. And we can't really take any judgment or do anything on that until it resolves itself.
But we, as a district, they get hired anyway, and then they work for a while, and then when the decision comes down, then we, the district, whomever, can decide, well, it doesn't
They're
can,
case by
then
case
they're
basis.
stuck.
Yeah.
For example, if it was something that had potential impact to the students, for example, then that employee gets on administrative leave until the case makes its way through the courts. If there's no impact to the students, or no risk, if you will, to the students or the district, then the employee continues to work while the case goes through the legal system.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we are pretty much mum's the word with respect to anything that we state, other than if they're on administrative leave or they're not.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I understand that.
Okay, you're going to that Brown Act thing?
In May now,
Yeah.
they switched it.
Yeah, they'll cover all of that, the Brown.
27, yeah. That's not bad, it's just 4 months later.
Same year.
Well, exactly, actually, it's just a new one, that's first, the same school year? No, okay, no,
You clear as mud on those now?
I am almost completely clear as mud, but good enough, it's just some stuff doesn't match up, and I have to know why not.
Still entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
A second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item number C, approval of skipping criteria with shared seniority dates. I believe we've seen that every year.
Every year, that is an annual event.
Are there any changes to that document?
None.
And motion to approve item C.
I move that we approve item C.
Second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I believe it's just it's criteria for basically laying off and so on and so forth, yeah.
Layoff recall.
Do we have layoffs in mind? I mean, we'll find out in March, but I mean, is that, at this moment, you're not projecting layoffs, right?
Yeah. This is a formality that we have to do each
Yeah,
year.
and I remember though that I just.
Our practice, at least for my tenure here, is every time we have an opening, we look at what's the most efficient way to do it. So we've changed a lot of CSEA assignments, we've changed administrative things, what we do, but we don't do it through layoff. We do it through natural attrition.
What's the motivation for skipping criteria?
It's something we have to have in place in case we had to lay off. Let's say
people
state
hired
funding all
somebody.
went to hell and they said, sorry, you're gonna get $3 million less. This would distinguish between candidate A and B who were hired both at the same board meeting. That's the criteria for seniority. It basically places them on the seniority list. It's you, then you, then you, even though you were hired at the same time.
So, any further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item D, entertain a motion to approve our 2018-19 audit report.
I'll motion to approve the 18-19 audit report.
And seconded by Paula. Any further discussion? I believe we had a pretty good presentation from Christy White's associates. Okay. Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And item E, acknowledgement of first read on the revised board policy 5123, promotion, acceleration, and retention. It's the only one for coming up for next board meeting. So get your reading in.
I have a question on it. Can you answer?
Go ahead.
In the past, I understood that the 15th of October was supposed to be a miraculous day, to be decided to help, to make sure a teacher knew that they were thinking of retaining in the elementary grades and notify parents. There were forms to fill out and stuff like that. This doesn't have anything to say about a specific date anymore. And it included acceleration as well as retention. And so I'm wondering, is that date no longer matter? The implication is as soon as you realize they're at risk, you're going to deal with it.
Right.
But especially in K1, 2, it's really different.
I'm sorry,
Go
go ahead
ahead.
and finish.
No, it
I
doesn't
wanted
matter.
to just say that I sent this board policy to each site administrator and received feedback from each one of them to what we are currently doing, because the stuff that was in there actually for K2 was really, really old.
Yeah.
And so that's compilation of all of that.
Oh, okay.
From what I received from that, from all of the site admins.
So this policy that we're looking at right now, as a first read, is an aggregate of what you guys have modified.
Yes, so 5 times a year I receive from CSBA about policy updates. This was one of them. Gamut, or CSBA, has like a generic report,
Right.
and then we can alter them. This is one that we do alter and make specific to our district, just like our high school graduation requirements. And so when I looked at this policy and read their handbook, I was like, for generic. I was like, oh. So I sent it to each administrator and received about that.
I can give you some examples of how it plays out differently for us. Maria and I have worked out where we have, with Mike, what an 8.5 student is. Somebody who, unsuccessful in 8th grade, chooses not to participate or do anything in summer school, and how we deal with them in the fall. We call them 8.5s. We also, at Blosser, we tend to try and not retain at grade level. We tend to, if we're going to retain, try to retain at 5th grade. And the rationale for that is everybody else has moved on. They can stay back, and in a week, it's not a retention anymore, I'm just in 5th grade. And as they progress through school, you know, they're just not in that grade anymore. So we look at that scenario at Blosser. At K2, it's very individualized. Has the student ever been in TK? Do they qualify for TK? Are they a really young 5-year-old and not doing well and we repeat kindergarten? Or do they struggle as we go, and then we use the same mentality of maybe we just retain at the end of 2nd grade, so the same thing happens. The classes move on, but they stay and they just assimilate into that 2nd grade group again. So it's very individualized. This is not a canned thing. Retention is a big deal. And it needs to be done judiciously, independently, and looking at the kid.
Okay, so then it's a lot of, the timeline then is no longer something that used to be like
It's not relevant. There's not a, for example, at Bechtel, they're telling kids 3 weeks into school, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing if you keep doing this. They're doing that all along. Then they don't go to the promotion ceremony. They have to go to summer school. Do they go to summer school? Do they do what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, where does an 8-5 go?
An 8-5 goes to both high school and middle school for the first trimester. So we actually have a fairly significant process, especially at 8th grade. But we have to make 8th grade, we have to make middle school matter. And so we've really refined that pretty nicely. But it's very different than what other districts will do. So if you go look at Ukiah's, you won't see anything about an 8.5 student. You will in ours. Just like it's individualized. I mean, when we have these conversations at Brookside, it's the parent, it's the teacher, it's maybe the previous year teacher. how old are they? What's their status? How much have they progressed this year compared to last year? Lots of decisions. You can't really write a policy for retention that says, on this date, we're going to decide if you make it or break it, and especially if it's October.
Yeah, well, that had always been an issue, and that's why when I didn't see anything, I was glad to see it wasn't there. I just didn't know why not.
And with most, without exception, generally the only place there's not much of an exception is at middle school, 8th grade to 9th grade. But in all those other grades, there's a parental agreement of what you're doing. It's not a forced compliance.
One of the things I saw in that policy was that for retention to happen, then we needed the principal and the teacher to agree for that to occur.
Right.
What happens when they don't agree? There was, in the prior language, there looked like there was a tiebreaker in there.
Well, the tiebreaker is always going to be the parent. The parent's going to be, probably going to be the 51% vote in those cases, except when we get to 8th grade. 8th grade is very different. 8th grade performance dictates opportunity, because that's what's going to happen to them when they hit high school.
Right.
So we're trying to plant that seed in middle school. But in K-1-2, almost without exception, you'll find that the parent is the 51% vote. And there are times when both the principal, the teacher, and the previous teacher say, we need to retain this child. And we say, it's our opinion, you need to retain them. Sometimes the parents will move the child to a different school. But we have to say that. And we get overruled occasionally by a parent. You know, nobody wants to have the wild card that I told you so, because it's not worth playing. The problem's now worse.
So this is a classic example, Paula, of if there's something in this policy that you don't care for, then get that.
Bring suggestions.
Yeah, bring those suggestions. Clearly, I bring them to staff first, and then bring them to the next board meeting as well. Because there's nothing earth-shattering about having this approved at the next board meeting.
And I'm pretty sure Maria has like a sheet. That
We have a whole we have a school policy.
Yeah, they have her administrative rule for this policy has just a set form. You go here, you go here, you go here, you go here. Here's what happens when this doesn't happen.
But parents get that up front, don't they?
Yes,
Or-
they do.
That's what I
Every
thought.
single newsletter.
Yeah, see
we mail that with a range.
there aren't as many surprises. Although I was asked once if it was decided at Bechtel that a kid shouldn't go from 8th to 9th. And this was a few years back, so it wasn't a matter of 8.5s, you know. Would a parent then appeal to the board or just pull their kid? And at the time, I thought pulling their kid was sort of a sin, so I didn't use that. But we don't, as a board, you don't get involved at all,
No,
right?
they would appeal to me.
Okay.
And I'll tell you how I sort it out very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
If they pass the CAFS test in math and English, they're going to 9th grade.
Okay, even though everything else is a failure, so to
Well,
speak.
but what that tells me is that we may make them an 8.5, we may do some of that stuff, but they have the academic skills to be successful.
Okay, yeah, they just.
That's what I'm really looking for.
Okay.
If a child, like I've said before in math, add, subtract, multiply, divide, fractions, decimals, they can't do that. Algebra's not going to happen. If they pass a CAS test, that's one of the criteria we use that might supersede their grade. But again, it's very individualized. You know, is it a student with special needs? Are they better off to be served if they stay back because of the program at that building, or better off to be moved up because of the program at that building? So just very much dependent on the child and the individual. It's too big a decision to make a policy black and white. Here's where you're at, sorry, you're staying.
Okay. And so your thought is it didn't happen yet, but if I were to come up with something, I would go and see the people involved first
Well, I
Isn't
would take
Yeah.
administration
Oh,
first,
okay.
iron out whatever you can there, and if you still think that it needs a change, then obviously bring your suggestion to the next board meeting.
Yeah, okay.
And I would collaborate with one of us. You can't collaborate with more than one of us
That's
in
true.
the meantime, to kind of bounce it off one way or the other. But start with staff and go from there.
Yeah, okay.
And I would use the philosophy in a board policy that the board supports retention when it's in the child's best interest.
Yeah,
Basically, that's the policy. And the administrative rule should be, look at the individual child, work with the parent, communicate, make sure they know why retention is a possibility. So I think in this case, the board language is probably pretty vague.
yeah.
But the administrative rule needs to be fairly tight on expectations before retention. You don't tell a parent on, August 21st, by the way, we're putting your kid back in first grade again this year.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It doesn't work real smoothly.
No.
But it's difficult when we used to have to say so early in the year,
Yeah.
the child looks like they're going to be retained because people, it's not in November, how do you know? And most of it is maturity more than academics at that
Right.
grade level, and it's those age groups. And I just wondered what the deal was.
I have a student study on Monday for a first grader at Sherwood.
Yeah,
And those are my first questions. How old? What's their performance? What are the issues? Talk to the parents gonna be there. What have you done? What do you see? Where are you at with this? And at Sherwood, we would clearly use the second grade split because we're already a K2 room. We wouldn't retain nobody even knows that they're in
Yeah,
kindergarten or first grade.
yeah.
So we would use the second grade as that mentality of, can you be successful in the 3-5 room?
Yeah, and that would be the easiest. Okay, thanks.
Agenda items for the next regular meeting. This is where we ran into some
Misunderstandings.
questions with respect to the issues that you were talking about last board meeting. I believe that we left that conversation off with, contact me, and we'll talk about how to get those things on the board, on the agenda.
Yeah,
And then we didn't have that conversation.
exactly. I sort of thought that I had sent an email that asked to have them put on there to the three of you.
Right, but I guess what I'm trying to say here is, generally, I'm going to be very liberal with respect to what goes on the agenda. But again, if three of us want it on the agenda, it'll be on the agenda, clearly. But the other part about it is, we're talking about making policy changes or creating new policies. And I would argue that in most cases, you simply need to bring whatever suggestions you want for those policies, and then we'll have a discussion here. And if three of us want that thing to be agendized so that we can actually make an action item, then it'll get on the agenda, which is pretty much that simple. On the other hand, if it doesn't get the consensus of at least three of us, it's not going to make it to the agenda.
Paula, didn't we set a date?
I'm sure I'm going to get one. Yeah, thank you.
I know it's not on my calendar, so Kristen must not have
It's
it.
right here.
Oh,
Talk
okay.
to Alex.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I know I submitted days and times.
Two of your dates, one of them is a holiday.
Oh,
Yeah.
quality. No wonder I chose that, right? No. The
okay then?
20th. Sorry.
We're gonna teach you tolerance on it.
There you go. I can tell. Maybe.
Boils down to is part of it's with the intent, keep the meeting moving.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to bring stuff before the board that the board really doesn't have any interest in hearing.
Yeah.
And so I could pick two of those items that you talked about. There are board policies. And so you can do some research on those. One was 3315 and the other one's 3551.
Right.
And so the research I would suggest you do is check those out, and then if you find something in there that you think
And they're board policies.
yes, and they're on Gamut Online, which you can access through the Woodland Unified School District website. So,
Yeah, I just learned that one. Which button
However,
to push.
I'd say more than 90% of any questions or issues you may have, you'd probably be able to solve right there with those people sitting there. Where they would at least be able to give you input, so even if you're not satisfied with what they say, you come with more to when you come with us. This is what I heard from Mark, and Mark said this, but I still don't agree with
And
it.
I write this.
and I spend a fair amount of time digging around those policies.
Yeah, no, that's good, okay, because I didn't find them, but I wasn't aware they were only board policies. I thought that they were also like ed code and things like that. And
Well,
I
yeah,
couldn't
most of that
find
stuff
them.
is driven by ed code
Well, and that's,
and
might
state and
account
federal
for it.
law.
And
Exactly,
they have
that's-
all the citations there at the end of each board policy.
yeah, well, see, I didn't see that.
And some things are subject to change, and some things we simply can't, which we just dealt with respect to the health education. You know,
And
unfortunately.
if there's no policy, then you, three of you have to want to have a policy and put one together.
Well, and I would say too, if you guys are at a point where you're working on a policy and we don't currently have one, there's still potential that Gannett has a policy recommendation for those. So there's still
Right.
sometimes places to start from instead of having to start from scratch.
Recommendation or template?
Yeah, so if you guys begin working on something and say, well, we want to develop a policy regarding this topic, we don't currently have one, you know, Trina can refer into, there's a different portal that we can access that's not out for the public that gives us templates and examples. And so there's things that you guys may be able to reference
I
if
can't
you're
even
building.
think of anything that would not be under
We're
board policy.
pretty well covered at this point,
Administration
a lot of them,
regs
but,
that we couldn't add. I mean, we could always add or tweak something that's in
Right.
one of those.
right.
I would say ed code is probably equal to the library we're looking at in here.
Or bigger.
Or more.
It's pretty ridiculous.
And the nice thing too is if you are like looking at the online version of our policy manual, those citations for ed codes and things have hyperlinks to the actual ed code language.
Yeah, I found that on a couple, but
Yeah.
you can just touch it and it'll
Takes you right
open
there.
it up, yeah, that was easy.
Anything further there?
Yeah, no.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn. Should we adjourn?
Second?
I'll second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Should we do
Regular
meeting two
meetings
right
adjourned.
now?
Yeah.